if we could just swap the slides as well. So this session is titled Roundtable, the Future of Wallet and Multi-Party Computation. So I actually think it's extremely relevant to the work that Open Wallet Foundation is working towards and striving towards. Masato, thank you. And online, if we could pin UV Herzog, as he's from Tide Foundation, which is a multi-party computation wallet provider. Yeah. Also, in the interest of time, understanding that we've sort of been delayed in a few things here, I guess I'll just quickly propose that this session goes until 12:45 or 12:40, and then we push lunch back until 1:45, and then we can take time away from the second coffee break, which is allocated for half an hour. But I hope that's okay with everyone. So firstly, just in introducing the topic of wallets and multi-party computation, have we got UV on wallets and multi-party computation? I actually think like the conversation this morning was phenomenal, and then of course the speech by Daniel also bleeds really, really well into this topic. And one of the biggest takeaways I got from the conversation this morning is that we actually have this interesting sort of confluence moment where wallets are actually being used not only for, of course, financial applications, but also non-financial applications. And there's actually this like unique sort of balance that needs to be struck between not only the privacy, but also the capabilities. And I actually agree with Daniel in the case that a wallet should not be fit for purpose one use case. I shouldn't just have my wallet for, of course, my digital identity, and then another one for my financial transactions, another one. That's just going to make it too difficult for us to get the right technology into the people's hands. So I would like to open this sort of roundtable and discussion. Firstly, of course, I'll have the main discussants introduce themselves, and then I'll ask some fiery questions. So we have Masato Omeka. If you could introduce yourself, and then I think it would also be helpful to maybe just brief on the accountable wallet work that you've been working on recently, because I actually think it's quite relevant to providing some solutions to the privacy pool conversation discourse we had earlier today. So, yeah.
Okay. I'm Masato Yamanaka. I'm a researcher at Georgetown University, and I'm a manager of the digital planning department at Sumitrust Corporation in Tokyo. And so let me explain what accountable wallet is. That when it comes to the governance, the people always talk about the key management, which is correct. But I guess that next step for the governance of wallet is that how we can prove yourself. I mean, you need to prove that you are a legitimate user to others, but we cannot define the compliant wallet. I mean that the compliant is totally depend on your counterparty. So what we can do is that the accountable. I mean that for example, some specific counterparty has a specific preference that I want to only deal with someone who live in United States, or this specific security token is only for specific investors, like institute investors. So, but in that case, you need to prove that you are qualified for the transaction. But to prove yourself, you are qualified, you need to get a lot of credentials. But more you have a lot of credentials, your personal information in jeopardy. So in that case, you need to use that zero knowledge proof. But the zero knowledge proof is actually not perfect. So issuing that zero knowledge proof is that like it's almost saying that you are belong to some specific sets. So if you issued a lot of the zero knowledge proof, the person, you could be narrowed down. You could be identified only one person. So maybe we need to make some guideline for that to use the to have a credential and to use the zero knowledge proof. So that's my idea. So
thank you. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of research at BGIN on the accountable wallet piece, and that's to sort of surmise, allowing for attestations to exist in wallets, so then these wallets can operate in more regulatory compliant DeFi environments. So I would just quickly pass to Angela, and then we'll let you go UV after Angela, and then of course Daniel, we've already been introduced. So Angela, if you could sort of provide some insight on your experience in developing wallets for mostly the Web 2 use case, but now getting into the Web 3 use case, understanding the advantage of this sort of decentralized based wallet infrastructure.
So I'm Angela. I've been working previously in sort of P2P payments in TradFi, and before that in sort of digital media for 20, 30, I think maybe even 30 years now, might be a while around.
You're not that old.
Thank you. And more recently in blockchain, sort of de-risking blockchain transactions. I think I really loved your talk, by the way. I think when I was listening to it, I thought the thing to sort of reinforce is that traditional players have been thinking about the digital wallet for a long time, and they've been thinking about it exactly how you're worried about it, which is how to control it and monetize it. I feel like my observation on that comes from if you think about the physical wallet, where it was, say, was a leather, leather container that held either cash and then cards. The anchor tenants in that were the identity documents and the cash originally, and then the cash was replaced by cards. So those anchor tenants didn't ever feel threatened in any way, and so they didn't really care about the container, which was the leather thing. As things became digitized and in Web 2, big tech became dominant, we saw the rise of, the banks really got alarmed when they saw, Apple and Google going into payments, but we also saw the rise of the super apps, and the super apps then got into payments, and then they saw these other things being entered, and suddenly traditional incumbents in identity and in payments or in banking, as it were, in who controls your cash and the data around that cash, started thinking about what a digital wallet is, and started being concerned that they needed to worry about the container as much as, because being the anchor tenant wasn't enough, that the container actually was going to control the data, was going to control whether you left the building, as it were. So it's not all of you are Australian, but it was a Westfield shopping centre suddenly versus just a physical wallet that people could be interoperable from. And as we know, if you're Westfield, it's quite hard to leave the building once you've got all the anchor tenants there, because all the traffic comes through your shopping centre. So I think the thing that's really important, I presume people here do realise it's not just about the fact that it's as important as browser history to have an open wallet and have control by the user, but a lot of time has already been lost because many years of development have happened by traditional incumbents, oligopolistic and monopolistic, to try to control that digital wallet ecosystem. And it's not just a single company that's sometimes seeking to control it, but it's groups of companies, and it's therefore industries that are seeking to control them. And in some places in the world, that is already happening, like in some Scandinavian countries. Identity is obviously an increasingly important anchor tenant in that, perhaps increasingly even more important than the transaction banking tenant, but sometimes it's the same people who control identity as well as transaction banking, or groups of the same people, if only the government is increasingly a partner with traditional banking partners in the identity consortiums. So I don't know that people fully understand what's in play in regards to that, because a company that I used to be, ostensibly we were running a payments app, P2P social payments app, like an Australian Venmo, Beam It, but the holding company of that was called Digital Wallet Australia. That's the company that I was running, and the mission of that company was to create a ubiquitous wallet for all Australians. So they are really, traditional players are have been for a long time quite openly saying they would like to control every aspect of everyday life, spend, identity, and provide that as a common good potentially to government clients to reduce the cost to them. So they're very much a similar sort of mission, but that they would provide that infrastructure and house government utilities and services in that. So I think that's quite advanced, that strategy. It comes out of Web 2. I think Web 3, what I was increasingly concerned regarding, so I guess sort of understanding what Web 2 centralization ultimately leads to. The Web 3 blockchain world hopefully has created a new group of people that understand that user choice and being able to control identity and your use cases and where your data is being used might lead to an understanding that we need some of the same things that we've assumed in the internet. But I do think we need a lot more awareness about what's already starting and being built. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Yuvi, of course, the expert in the room on multi-party computation. If you could take it away.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Yuval Herzog. My background is started in cyber intelligence, in hardcore cryptography in Israeli intelligence, but later on joined a company called Vocaltech that started the whole revolution of voice over IP. So I sat on standing committees and written the first voice over IP protocols, and later on this is developed through the evolution of the LTE protocol in GSM technology. So I have some painful experience when I heard Daniel about writing standards in the world and getting countries and companies to collaborate. So I know the pain, so I really compassionate to that. In Tide, our approach to wallets is we started going there by trying to solve the privacy problem in a commerce world by attacking the ownership problem. And anyone that tried to attack privacy with ownership got boggled down with the legal issues. So we approached it differently. We approached it from the underlying authority layer problem. And that's the problem that we actually solved. What we're trying to achieve, what we're actually building is an infrastructure to allow for a walletless experience, a walletless world where the user experience, the utility, the interface to receive services is still being done by companies, vendors, by publishers that control the user experience, but it's completely detached from the authority that users have over their voice, over their control, over their currency, over their assets, over their privacy, or anything. And by detaching authority, we achieve the same goals of a wallet, but without the hurdles of the usability and the barriers that engaging with a crypto wallet, for example, will introduce: managing private keys, creating sort of names and all those things, and doing this by creating, I think, as Daniel very well put it, as a global infrastructure that allows this capability for developers. And frankly enough, we found that actually our consumers for this service are not end users that get the benefit of it, but it's actually the companies and vendors that get the benefit of removal of liability, the gigantic liability that they currently hold by having this unwanted authority. And we found that actually the commercial world is actually driving that, not us.
I guess, Daniel, if you wanted to comment on that and we can explore the conversation from there. I've got a whole bunch of questions here, but we've also received a couple of questions from the audience.
Yeah, I'll skip the introduction because you have already met me, but Yuval, I led the integration of Day3 when we made that investment, and I convinced Ronald to make that investment and work with Noam. So I'm sure we have a couple of the same colleagues. And let me just say, I think I'll probably speak for everyone here. We are all with you, and I think the suffering happening at the moment is terrible on every side. So let me just express that feeling.
Fantastic. So I guess I have a couple sort of pre-prepared questions here. We've got, what is the state of wallet governance and how can stakeholders collaborate to develop a more comprehensive and objective wallet taxonomy? So the taxonomy in particular is what I want to sort of drill into. And I think actually Open Wallet Foundation is probably going to be working towards something like that. So I guess, yeah, if I could pose that to you, Daniel, and we can go from there.
You know, I'm a huge fan of building on what's built. So especially if you want to reinvent stuff, it's always good to focus on what it is you want to reinvent and then say, okay, there are a couple of areas where maybe we don't need to start from scratch and we can look at what has worked really well in the past. So I don't want to turn this into a blatant advertisement for Open Wallet Foundation. So I'll try to be a little more general, but I think, you know, there are a couple of things that work well. We know that open standards work really well. We know that open source in general, you know, with Open Wallet Foundation or outside of Open Wallet Foundation, open source works really well. We know that there are some multi-stakeholder situations that work well. And in my opinion, the very basis is not technology and is not, you know, the very basis is always, do we have a desire to come together and look beyond what sets us apart to find the areas where we have a common interest and then decide to ruthlessly cooperate and work together on those areas. Because technologies will change, standards will change, code will change. You know, we will change. Our kids, our grandchildren one day are going to take this over. But the fundamental is always the same. It is, you know, what is it that we want to do and where do we see a common cause? And in my opinion, when it comes to wallets, almost every government, every company, every nonprofit, we all share, I think, a desire to say that we want a neutral ecosystem. We want something that does not allow any one player from simply treating wallets as their own little fiefdom. And if that is true, if this is something that we all share, I think the question, you know, just becomes, let's look at the institutions and the things that we have been able to create in the past that worked well, and how can we deploy those tools in the best way possible to reach this shared goal.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. I guess to sort of bridge the conversation there, maybe it would help with the audience if we actually understand what really distinguish multi-party computation away from other sort of types of wallets. And then perhaps we could drill into where those technologies are actually going to fill the best use cases. So Uwe, if you could give us just a high-level overview of what is one of the distinguishing features of MPC, that could help steer.
Yes, so MPC is one of those magical protocols, magical properties of math that allows for capability that almost sounds impossible. It's the ability to allow for a secret, in this case, a cryptographic key, not to exist in one single place, but actually exist nowhere by a group of participants. Those are those participating nodes, each one of them holding just an incoherent part of that key, and allowing those group of computers, those group of nodes, to perform computation on the key without knowing what they're computing, without knowing what the processing that they're doing and what's the output that's come out of it, making the process entirely verifiably secure. In the wallet space, it gives a magical capability to solve a very critical flaw in a centralized wallet management, which is the key needs to exist somewhere by someone on something. Now, on key creation, on key usage, this poses a critical, catastrophic vulnerability that something can actually get this key exfiltrated or stolen by a rogue entity. Where in multi-party computation, you can actually trust the key to not exist anywhere, ever. but with a guarantee that you can use it with the right sort of authority through protocol at any point, anytime, with the right means, knowing that none of the fail-safe protocols can be bypassed because it's managed by a cohort or consortium of multi-party computation nodes.
Thank you. Do you see MPC as becoming almost like a default technology for wallet use, or do you think there is still going to be, of course, maybe an evolution in MPC, or an evolution in other types of technology that support wallets for different use cases? Because we've been speaking about almost like this confluence between financial-based applications or blockchain-based wallets, and then also the social-based wallets too. So is MPC more fit for purpose for financial applications? Is it more fit for purpose for non-financial applications? Can it help for both? Anyone? Yeah.
Yeah, I see MPC as a solution in the long run for anything that requires management of authority of any kind. And that could be individual authority of a person, individual. That could be a corporate authority of, right now, an unsolved problem in zero trust is that the corporate still holds the authority to sign every JWT authentication certificate, which is a big vulnerability. And of course, in governance and government processes, the authority is held somewhere by someone on something. MPC could solve all of this. Unfortunately, MPC today is a very expensive protocol that can mostly run on just very few, very strong, powerful nodes. But there are already technology that allows it to run on a very light or in a decentralized environment all over an entire decentralized network.
Thank you. We should have a question from the audience, Stephen, if we could get a mic to him. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Steve Wilson from Lockstep. I just want to level set on the problem that MPC is solving. If it's private key exfiltration, pardon me, I reckon there must be 100 billion single key wallets in the world in the forms of SIM cards and EMV cards. And I think there must be tens of millions of hardware security modules at the core of the internet itself, the DNS and banking. Now, none of that's perfect, but to my knowledge, there's not a scalable exfiltration of private keys from chips, 100 billion chips. So I'm just wondering, what problem is MPC really solving? Because you talked about private keys and then you pivoted to something else. So maybe I'm missing something.
So I would say that exfiltration of keys is probably the most crystal clear problem. But a bigger problem than the exfiltration is the authority over the creation of the key and the guarantee that the key was actually from the beginning started generated correctly in a verifiable way and then being managed and used throughout its entire life cycle in a way that you can trust it to be still biasless or trustless. Now, I would say that a lot of incidents lately have proven that exfiltration is a real danger, a real problem. Especially you mentioned hardware secure computer HPCs, or which again have been proven again and again that they are vulnerable to side channel attacks, and keys can exfiltrate from even those very secure modules. So yes, it's the exfiltration of keys are the most obvious problem, but also the authority over who's managing this infrastructure is actually the biggest problem it's solving.
That's true.
I'm sorry, I'm not aware as a security professional of that being a rife problem in practice. I understand the theory, but in practice, the banking system would have collapsed by now if we had exfiltration of private keys from HSMs. I don't see that it's a practical problem as yet. I'm not denying the theory. I'm just trying to level set. Yeah. Are we really going to do all of this effort to go to an expensive multi-party protocol? As you said, it's expensive. Are we actually going to do that when we're literally talking about 100 billion smart cards that might be deemed to be obsolete? I don't see it being obsolete. That's all.
Well, I would say that, first of all, the problem that it's MPC is expensive and very computationally resource is a problem that, again, companies like ourselves, like Tide Foundation, have solved. So it's a solvable solution to make it run on a very light, fully decentralized network on a very, very large scale, pretty much infinite, very similar to how the DNS protocol work, I would say, because it's probably the most appropriate comparison. But again, saying that it's not a problem, we are currently working with some of NIST groups that are trying to solve the problem of zero trust in cybersecurity. With the problem right now, zero trust is a one-way trust that exists because you still need to trust the identity and access management, for example. That's at the core of it sits a cryptographic key, where NIST are absolutely aware of the vulnerability that that's actually present. And a solution that takes away that key from that core system is the only way forward to allow two-way zero trust capability. So I would say that more organizations today acknowledge the fact that the existence of a key in one single place is probably cybersecurity biggest problem.
Thank you. I'm just going to quickly go to a couple questions from the online audience. And I may direct this question to Angela. Do you think one organization like MetaMask can monopolize the wallet industry in the future and then try to provide a digital ID solution?
So I think that a number of players are incentivized to try because of what is seen as the advantages of controlling or owning the container. If you think, maybe it's not a great metaphor, I know it's not similar, but like I still remember a presentation where a government representative, a very senior government representative, I worked at the ABC at the time, came and presented to the senior executives at the ABC and told us that Facebook was a civil good, was a town square, and that we should use the infrastructure for conveying information. Now that sounds ridiculous, but it was very early, and I thought it was ridiculous, but everyone else in the room didn't think it's ridiculous. So there's, I think, enough people who understand that the container, if you can control a container and you own the container, there's a lot of value at stake. So I do think that a lot of people will be incentivized to try. So I'm very interested in to see who would join an initiative like the Open Wallet Foundation. That gives me hope to see a number of players on that board. And it would be very good for society if we could get a coalition of people not to try to control the wallet or to dominate the wallet, but rather to operate their services within it. But people are going to try to create wall gardens. Yeah. So I don't know specifically about whether MetaMask would do it, but I think there's heavy incentives for people to try. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It actually leads into the next question quite well. And it's, do you think wallets are an area of collaboration area or an area of competition? So I feel like we've been discussing this at the high level throughout the sort of the entire round table today. But I guess, yeah, anyone from the main discussants or in the room would like to comment on that as well?
I was just going to, maybe I start with it. I think there's an understanding that you want multiple, like the specialization is not going to work as a strategy. So I think there's an understanding from people who want to control the wallets that they need multiple to cover the bases. They need identity in there. They need transactions. They probably need a crypto wallet in there. They might need other features. So I do think that there's collaborations of people who are seeking to control the wallet environment together or have aligned commercial interests, and that they feel like by doing it collectively, one, it won't look like that it's a business plan. It'll look like we're serving a public purpose and we are providing this infrastructure, and it's really good, particularly if they use identity as the Trojan horse for security and for saying we're doing something good for society. But really it's just a business plan behind that. There are some, so I think there is, and then there's some, hopefully some genuine collaboration, which is much more around the opportunity for users to have choice and freedom. But we need a lot more on that other side of the fence, because at the moment I think there's quite a lot of movement on the people who are collaborating and presenting not a dissimilar vision to the Open Wallet Foundation vision, but it's actually a business plan.
It's more like a consortium.
I think
Consortium, yeah.
when you go back to the basics, it's again the question of Jean-Jacques Rousseau versus the United States, district attorney. Is the nature of humans, is it good or bad or both? And in my opinion, we all have an innate capability to recognize good from evil. And I think also none of us are beyond the ability to be corrupted. So I think every human being can be in a situation where you are corrupted. So I like what you're saying. I think if as a company, as a shareholder, as a CEO, you feel that you have more to gain by going it alone and by trying to use wallets as a choke point, a lot of people are going to do that. What gives me hope is a very simple mathematical observation. The majority of participants in an ecosystem will always believe that they have more to lose than to gain in a space. There cannot be, 1,000 companies that all believe that they're going to monopolize a space. That's just naive. So let's say everyone here in this room would be the leader of one wallet company. There are probably 2 or 3 who think that they may have a shot to go it alone and be the dominant player, and really, everyone else is just going to live in their world. But it also means that the rest of us all believe that we have more to lose living in such a world than to win. And that creates an opportunity to start a movement. It creates an opportunity for those folks who have more to win, more to lose in a wallet world without cooperation to work together. So then you and I are going to work together, and then there is someone else to, agreeing with that notion that there is more to lose without cooperation. And the more people come together and create that, the more companies will see that it's actually more likely that they lose without cooperation rather than win. And eventually, all of us are going to become strong enough that there could be no one left to think that they're better off not cooperating. And I don't have a glass ball. I cannot say that this is what's going to happen, but I think the stakes are so high because wallets are so important. If infrastructure is that critical, it is critically important to get it right. And that just means that everyone here, everyone online, everyone interested in this space, I think has got to be on the same mission.
I thought of something you said when you talked about governments before. I thought I don't 100% agree with you, because I think that there's the power of the anchor tenants at the moment, particularly the sort of transaction banking and identity. But I do think that the government services is kind of going to be an identity, a critical component. So to the extent that the governments understand that you need interoperability and that you don't want your citizens captured by any particular group, I was sort of wondering if that's in addition to your, all the smaller players, that if governments are pro interoperability and openness, then that will allow, ultimately, it doesn't matter if some people dominate for a while, consumers will realize that there's choice and they'll be able to move without cost. Then that's a great hope as well. So it sounds like governments really need to understand that they need to be cautious of participating in wallet projects where there's a business agenda or a particular group has sort of captured the container or owns the container, as it were.
Yeah. And I think ideally in a partnership. So, even governments are sometimes struggling with very, very, very large companies, because a very large company can say, well, you make the rules, but if, I may decide not that I don't want to play ball with you, and I'm just not going to play at all in the wallet space in your particular corner. And most of the use cases are not the ultra high-end use cases, which governments will most naturally control, right? So I think ideally it is really everyone who has this desire for cooperation coming together, whether they're nonprofits, for-profit companies, or government officials. And I think we will recognize that we are the majority. Almost everyone wants this. So for every one player who wants to monopolize the space, there are thousands of players, public or private, that don't want to see this happen. But if we don't come together, we create a vacuum that those players are going to exploit. And then it's really, at the end of the day, it's our fault.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. Okay, so a quick comment and question from Carol, and then we'll have to summarize and get everyone well fed.
I promise it'll be quick. I'm so glad that you brought up the role of government, because I totally agree. This was, it was a point of conversation when I was inside, and it still remains one on just mobile driver's licenses, not even the wallet infrastructure to support all use cases, which was the issue of if we don't intervene early enough, then Apple, Google, and Samsung are like, those are the biggest players. They're duking it out to see who's going to win the mobile driver's license fight. But ultimately, like the having to prioritize from the government, like the need to make sure that whatever is prioritized is interoperable so that they can't become the one, mobile driver's license ring to rule them all. I totally agree that I think it reemphasizes the points that you guys have made about the need for government buy-in, because the market may not fix itself, and that's exactly where governments are supposed to intervene. So making sure that you get government buy-in as early as often in the creation of that infrastructure, otherwise you have to fix it after the fact. So just reinforcing everything that you said, and that it totally mirrors and parallels the experience we had in the US.
Fantastic. So let's hope that oh yeah. Are you okay? One more question.
So this is a question for UV. So with these wallets, how big groups are you looking at, or how many parties? Because problem with MPC is as you scale, I mean, as the number of parties grow, it becomes unmanageable. So that's my first question. And I'm just trying to understand, I've heard of MPC wallets. I don't know how they work. So what is the underlying computation that typically happens in that, like, or is it application dependent?
I'll start with the scaling issue. Right now, existing very famous multi-party computation solutions, such, for example, the most famous one is Fireblocks, are operating on very small clusters of 3 to 5 nodes. But multi-party cryptography, which is again a layer above it, can allow for much larger cohorts of nodes. For example, we have established a network where each key is distributed over a cohort of 20 different nodes with a threshold of 14. Now we can extend it to 50 and 100 nodes as well without any effort. It's just redundant from experiments that we've made. And that's each key, individual key. Because each individual key is distributed across different nodes, the network can grow infinitely and still can lose 30% of its node without any interference to the network.
Yeah, I understand that, but just one question on that, because your communication cost will become exorbitantly high with this big, size. So, I mean, theoretically it is possible. I'm just asking about the practical, side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the problems that they had to solve in multi-party cryptography is the communication cost. Now, again, our multi-party computation ability, which has again been studied for the last 5 years by 3 universities, have reduced the communication cost to a single interaction. So there is what's called non-interactive multi-party computation, which is extremely light and efficient. So it's actually reduced communication compared to even I would say one of the least compared to any blockchain, for example, a network that exists there. It's a fraction of that. I'm happy to go over the details in the cryptographic details of it, but it's possible. The point is that it's a viable, provable solution. And again, it's not my words, it's RMIT words, Deakin University.
Do you have the references that we could actually have on BGIN's maybe notes?
Yeah, we can find that for you, and by all means, I'll also be happy to link you with UV to have a great conversation offline.
Thank you.
If I could just sort of take the floor, and thank you so much to the main discussants for this conversation. I think it's extremely pertinent to a lot of the overarching discussions we had. And I said earlier today, we have divided the BGIN conference into financial applications and non-financial applications, but more and more I find that the two are joining together and finding convergence. So yeah, a round of applause for the main discussants. And of course, we'll go to lunch now, and it is 10:02. So if people could be back here by 1:45, we'll start the workshops then. And the two workshops that will be first in room A, it's CKP and its applications. So this is largely coming out of the privacy pools in the first discussion, where the moderator will be Leona from IntMax, Masato, Gemma, and Arturo will be in that workshop session. And then the other session will be room B, which will be run and organized by Masato. And that will have Daniel, Mark Greenslade, myself, and Ken Katayama, where we will discuss the ability for wallets to actually have accountability attached whilst maintaining privacy, using things like soulbound tokens. So really looking forward to that. And yeah, thank you, everyone.